Hello and welcome to the Raw podcast brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. And today we're going to be looking ahead to Saturday's FA Cup fixture against Fulham at Craven Cottage. So to preview the game at the weekend, we are joined by Peter Rutzler from The Athletic, who reports on Fulham. Peter, how's things with you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on. Things are going pretty well at Fulham. So it's been quite enjoyable this season. It's very strange to enjoy the Premier League and picking up results in the Premier League. So they've been flying. So for me, it's been a lot of nice positive things to write.
Yeah, it's always good. There's been some positive things to write with Sunderland as well. So both sides coming into this game in pretty good form. Just looking at the Premier League table at the minute, Fulham all the way up in 7th, and as you say, having a very good season so far. And they've always kind of been renowned as a bit of a yo-yo side, haven't they, going up and down between the leagues. But this season, they have really been able to hold their own. So what do you think has changed this season at Craven Cottage?
Well, I think the big thing is Marco Silva coming in last season. I think he's installed a clear playing philosophy, a clear identity. He's also managed to get the best out of a lot of players who, maybe have seemed to sort of slip between the gap between the Championship and the Premier League. Obviously, Mitrovic is the obvious example, but I'm thinking of Tim Ream and Naskins Cabano and players like that. And then coming into the Premier League after what was an incredible Championship season, scored more than 100 goals and just made light work of what is a notoriously difficult division to get out of. They made some really good signings last summer. Andres Pereira, João Palhinha, Bernd Leno, Willian. Quite a few players actually with points to prove, and that seems to be kind of the common thread throughout the club, to be honest. As you said, the club have sort of yo-yoed between the top division and the second division. Even Silva himself had a point to prove, really, after how it ended at Everton. And obviously you can see how things are going at Everton now. I mean, I think his work there looks a little bit better in hindsight. But that kind of theme has characterised Fulham's impressive return to the Premier League, and since they've come up to the top flight, they've maintained the key characteristics that work so well for them in the Championship, while adding, the quality in midfield with like Palhinha and Pereira, but a bit of grit, a bit of steel, an ability to win games in many different ways, and that's paid off handsomely, really. I mean, they picked up some fantastic results against the teams that, in the middle of the table and the bottom half as well. And now they sit 7th, having, narrowly lost to Tottenham on Monday night, a game that could have gone either way. And it's just very enjoyable for Fulham fans, because that yo-yo experience is emotionally draining from the highs to the lows. But yeah, they're in a really good place at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, they are in a good place, but it is back-to-back defeats, quite narrow defeats as well. You mentioned the defeat to Tottenham and also 1-0 defeat against Newcastle just before that. So bearing in mind what's going on in the league, how seriously do we think they're going to take the FA Cup competition against Sunderland on Saturday?
I think they will take it quite seriously. I mean, of course, they've had those back-to-back defeats. I mean, there are lots of positives to take from them. I think they're in a difficult run of fixtures at the moment. As Newcastle, Tottenham, there's Chelsea up next in the league. But because of where they are, and they've got this sizable gap now to the bottom three, they're on 31 points. So, I mean, they're essentially 3 wins away from 40, which normally is more than safe. It gives them maybe a bit more license to take the cup competition that bit more seriously. I think the third round win over Hull City was quite informative. In the League Cup at the start of the season, when they lost to Crawley and just crashed out, they played a very young team and had a very young bench as well. Against Hull, it was completely different. It was a very senior team. You had some regulars starting as well. Issa Diop, Tosin Adrabayo, Andres Pereira. They've got some good rotation options now who, will want minutes, and I expect they will rotate. I'd be surprised, for instance, if we saw Alexander Mitrovic, who probably needs a break. But in terms of the rest of the squad, they've got some talent that needs minutes to play, and Fulham may fancy a crack at the FA Cup. There are a few top teams have dropped out. Obviously, Arsenal and Manchester City are playing each other in this round. A few wins and a good draw can take you a long way, and it's not very often that you find yourself with a Premier League standard squad, in Fulham's case anyway, sitting mid-table without necessarily that major concern about relegation. Of course, there's talk of Europe. I feel that's very far-fetched for a newly promoted team. But it does feel like they will want to take this competition seriously. I know managers always say that they'll take it seriously, and Marco Silva has said that. But the proof is in how the team sets up, and it was a good team that went to Hull, and I expect it'll be another good team on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, referring to that whole game, I did quickly have a look at the team and saw it was still quite a strong team, but he did make some changes. So you mentioned Mitrovic possibly will be rested. I think he picked up an ankle injury, didn't he, against Tottenham. So who are sort of some of the key players that could maybe come in and have a point to prove, or just key players that you think could play on Saturday at Craven Cottage?
Yeah, well, up front, I think Carlos Vinicius will get another run out. He scored the winning goal against Chelsea in the local derby here, which means a lot to Fulham supporters. They hadn't won that game since 2006, so it was quite a moment for them to beat their bigger rivals down the road, and for Vinicius to score the winning goal as well, because it's so difficult coming in and being in the shadow of someone like Alexander Mitrovic. His form's been incredible since Silva's come in, and if you're signing at Fulham like Vinicius did in the summer, you're going to be the backup. And of course, Vinicius did that at Tottenham under Harry Kane. But it means that there's less chance to assess how good you are. There's less chance to create an affinity with supporters. So, I mean, in terms of, changing that picture, scoring the winning goal against Chelsea is right up there. That's straight into folklore stuff. So his confidence is up. He'll want to kick on from that moment and keep showing what he can offer, then that he can challenge and not make it easy for Mitrovic, not let him rest on his laurels up front. Another one to look out for might be Menor Solomon. He signed in the summer. He played briefly against Liverpool on the opening day and then was injured the next day and has been out for about 4 months. He's now back. He returns full fitness after the World Cup, and he's just been building up his minutes slowly. And against Tottenham on Monday, he looked really lively from the bench as Fulham chased the game. So he hasn't started a game for Fulham yet. I think this weekend could be a good opportunity to do that. It'd be good to see what he can do, and I'm sure Willian will need a rest, considering how many games he's sort of played this year. But there are others too. Harry Wilson's still got a point to prove. He also had a knee injury, and he was brilliant in the Championship last year, but he's not had the chance really to make a mark in the Premier League. At left back, I'd imagine that Layvin Kurzawa is a World Cup winner, of course, with France. He'll probably get a chance to show what he can do. He's had some fitness issues. But I think in midfield, there may not be as much rotation. I imagine you'll still see a few regulars because just like Fulham did at Hull, I think that they'll want to try and get a good result here and make sure to get the job done because, as you'll know, Sunderland are doing really well this season. They've got some really good attacking threats and you don't want to take a game like this lightly.
I'm looking at the team as well, although systems can be quite flexible a lot of the time. It looks like Fulham have often set up with a 4-2-3-1 formation. Is that kind of the system you'd expect them to stick with, whoever comes in or out of the side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, since day one, Marco Silva has played the same system, no matter who he's playing, no matter where. It's always it's like a 4-3-3. It sets up as a 4-2-3-1 as well, but you've got Andreas Pereira in that three, who then gets closer to Mitrovic as a sort of a number 8/number 10. You've got Harrison Reed tends to be on the other side. It'll be Palhinha as the holding midfielder. So I'd imagine it'd be the same system. I can't see it changing for this game. Sometimes, late in matches, he'll switch to a 3 if they're trying to see out a scrappy 1-0. But generally, he's always played the same way, always the same system. Sometimes with roles tweaked, what different players can offer in different positions. And that kind of thing. But yeah, they're very consistent for them. I think that's been a key thing. Silva's come in. This is the way we're going to play. It's a front foot mentality. It's a positional style of play, and that 4-3-3 is the basis for everything. And the players have slotted in nicely.
Mm-hmm. On Fulham over the years, I think in kind of recent seasons, they've been kind of portrayed as a team that will keep the ball, play some nice football. Is that kind of how you expect the game to go against Sunderland, playing against Sunderland, obviously a championship side, a lower league opponent? Is that kind of how they'll approach the game, try and dominate possession and do that against Sunderland?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly at home. They start fast generally. They like to press quite high and aggressively. They'll want to see most of the game in Sunderland's half if they can. And I think in the Championship last year, they would sometimes get caught on the counter-attack because they would commit a lot of bodies forward, especially the fullbacks as well. And that leaves the two centre-halves relatively exposed sometimes. But I think what they've done in the Premier League has made themselves more solid in central areas. Palhinha's come in and swapped in for Jean-Michel Seri, who of course is at Hull now. And he was more of a creative influence in the team, whereas Palhinha is more of a destroyer, loves a ball-winning tackle and that kind of thing. So they should be more secure in that sense. But Fulham at home, in front of should be a good crowd, I think. And then I think they'll want to take the game to Sunderland to get the job done as quickly as possible. And their mentality is always to score goals. We saw that in the Championship last season. They're not really the type that like to sit on a 1-0. If they can get ahead, they'll want to try and build on that as much as possible. So, and that can open up opportunities for opponents, especially those with the attacking players that Sunderland have. And I think they'll be aware of that threat for sure.
Just looking at the last meeting between these two sides, they haven't played since 2018, which was a Championship fixture. The year that Sunderland got relegated from the Championship, I'm sure a year that Sunderland fans will want to forget about. You mentioned there'll probably be a good crowd there. So what is kind of the feeling ahead of this match? Obviously an opportunity in the FA Cup with Fulham doing well in the league. Will fans be quite optimistic and looking forward to this tie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think more than normal. I mean, there's generally a bit of reticence about the FA Cup and cup competitions for Fulham because they don't tend to go on many cup runs. It's been quite a while since they've reached the latter stages of a cup competition. But because of the way the team are playing in the league, because of the consistency of those performances regularly against any team, there's a sense that why not? Why can't Fulham go on a good cup run? Sunderland won't be an easy draw by any stretch of the imagination, but it creates that excitement, that sense. It's a home draw, it's a chance to get into the fifth round, and once you get to the fifth round and then onto the quarters, it's not far before you're looking towards Wembley. So. Fulham have some fond recent memories of Wembley, so they'd love to get back there. I mean, that's it feels quite optimistic talk for Fulham, really. But this is this kind of season, to be honest. It's been radically changing how you approach it. Previously it's always been promotions to target, or relegation is what the team need to focus on. But I think there may be more of a sense of why not? Why can't Fulham compete and show what they can do in these competitions as well?
And one player who will be going back to Craven Cottage, we were talking about him just before, is Patrick Roberts, a player who came through at Fulham, got his big money move to Man City, didn't work out from there, and he's now ended up at Sunderland and performing well in the Championship. So kind of how is he remembered at Fulham, and do you expect him to get a good reception from the home fans?
I hope so. I mean, he obviously was part of a team that reached the FA Youth Cup final. I think it was in the early 2010s. A really talented player, probably one of the first sort of very exciting prospects that got everyone really talking. I mean, he was in the same team as Moussa Dembele, who's obviously gone on to play for Lyon and Atletico Madrid as well. But yeah, he had that sort of excitement at that time, and I think he made some first team appearances initially under Felix Magath and then Kit Simons, and then before you knew it, he was whisked away to Manchester City. But Fulham fans will remember him because I think they'll probably think of him in the terms of what if, and maybe he could have played more games for them. His talent at youth level was undoubted. There was no doubt about his quality. It's just never quite worked out for him since. And I suppose in a sense it can be seen as maybe a cautionary tale for some other players. I think Ryan Sessegnon stayed for longer and then went to Tottenham. I mean, even he's still finding his feet there. So it's not always easy for young players when making that transition. And it seems like for Patrick Roberts, it's taken a bit of time to find somewhere where he's settled, and it's been quite good to see that he's really found a home at Sunderland and making a real impression. We mentioned about him signing a contract in the summer there, and just having that stability, I think, is really important, and playing at a really good level and playing regularly. For Fulham, it'd be good to see a former academy product. Their academy's been fantastic over the past decade in terms of producing players in what is a really competitive area to find them. And Patrick Roberts was probably one of the first to sort of break onto the scene, really, and show what he can do. And I hope he gets a warm reception. I think he's one of those that is seen in as I said before, in that kind of what if sense, and maybe he could have played more games for Fulham and made more of a mark in that sense. But he was destined for bigger things, and that quality is still there. It's just about being able to show it regularly, and it seems like maybe he's beginning to show that again under Tony Mowbray at Sunderland.
Yeah, he had a bit of a spell out of the side, but he's now come back in with an injury to Alex Pritchard, and I thought was really good in the game against Middlesbrough on Sunday, which Sunderland won 2-0, linked up really well with Ahmad, and those two I think could be a big threat again for this Fulham fixture if they both stay in the team. But Peter, we usually finish just by asking our guests just how they think the game is going to go, and just for a quick score prediction. Obviously, it's difficult to maybe know who exactly is going to play, but we think Fulham will play a strong side. I expect Sunderland to probably name a pretty strong side as well. So how do you see the game kind of panning out this weekend?
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend on rotation. I was quite, in the third round, I think Hull made more changes than Fulham did. So it'd be interesting to see if that sort of happens again. Either way, I mean, Fulham do have the quality, and you would expect them to win this game. But upsets can happen, and I think if there is an off day, if they do take it for granted, then they can be caught. I think it'll be a 2-0 win for Fulham. But I mean, predictions in the FA Cup is anyone's guess, to be honest. So no, it should be a good game. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully it'll be a couple of two strong teams to put out, and and I'm sure Sunderland will be up for it as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it should be a good game against two sides that will take it seriously, and we'll have a go. But I think Fulham, being at home as well, being the kind of higher division side, maybe with a bit more depth to their squad, I think they may just edge it 2-1. But I think it could be a tight game, and I think Sunderland definitely do have a chance. But Peter, thanks a lot for joining us on the latest episode of the Sunderland Echo, the Raw podcast. Tony Mowbray, the Sunderland boss, is speaking to the media later on Thursday, so you can see what he has to say over on the SAFC section of the Sunderland Echo website, and we'll also have more build-up to Saturday's FA Cup game. You can just head over to the website. We'll also have live updates, analysis and reaction from Craven Cottage over the weekend. So once again, thanks a lot for listening to the Raw podcast.